CTV News at 5 with Hudson Mack.
In the courts today, the man who orchestrated a deadly shooting outside a downtown Victoria nightclub has been sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 15 years. Samfavana Chantabula was initially convicted of first-degree murder in the death of 20-year-old Philbert Trong. The charge was later reduced to second-degree murder. Chantabula got into an altercation with Trong's friend inside the Red Jacket nightclub on View Street downtown in 2008. He called a friend with a gun to come to the club. Trong was killed when he stepped in front of the bullet between his friend and the 16-year-old gunman, Mark Arrieta. Arrieta has already been sentenced as an adult to life in prison. That happened in 2010. The Supreme Court of Canada is allowing a group of Vancouver sex trade workers to challenge the country's prostitution laws. Ottawa wanted to prevent a constitutional challenge of laws relating to adult prostitution, but the court denied the bid, saying that it can go ahead. It's being launched by a downtown East Side advocacy group and a former sex trade worker.
So I'm very happy that now finally I can go to court and tell the judges how these laws affected me and how they continue to affect other sex workers and hopefully create some change.
It's not usual for individuals or groups to be allowed to launch a constitutional challenge if they are not facing related criminal charges, but the Supreme Court says the issue is serious and is important enough to allow it to proceed. The federal government says it is opposed to the legalization or the normalization of prostitution because it is harmful to our most vulnerable people. For the first time, details are emerging about the day a Nanaimo man was shot and killed by his own son. In a remote area near Bamfield in July 2010, Brendan Menard took aim at his father, Tony Menard, and shot him 5 times. Earlier this month, Menard entered a guilty plea to a charge of manslaughter, and today he went to court in Duncan for sentencing. CTV's Scott Cunningham was there. He joins us live in our Nanaimo newsroom with more. Scott.
Hudson, just an hour and a half ago, Brendan Menard and the rest of his family let out a sigh. They did so together when they heard a Supreme Court judge would reserve his decision for sentencing for another month. They had come to court today for Menard's sentencing hearing, hoping for closure. Today, the court heard of a strong father-son relationship, but people close to Tony Menard, the father, say there had been trouble in the days and weeks leading up to Tony Menard's death. They say Tony Menard did not like his son's girlfriend and had asked Brendan to cancel plans with her to join the family on a hunting trip instead, and it was on that trip that Brendan Menard killed his father.
Well, we're saying that when you look at the crime, the range for the sentence should be between 3 and 5 years, but there's a number of key arguments when you look at the number of shots that were directed towards Mr. Menard, which hit his body. And when you look at the state of the accused, and the Crown says that his state was induced by himself and by his actions.
The crux of this decision rests on how responsible Brendan Menard was for his own behavior at the time he killed his father. Brendan Menard has a history of seizures, 2 in the days leading up to the shooting, and he had also ingested a significant amount of alcohol and a small amount of marijuana in the days leading up to the shooting as well. Since the shooting 2 years ago, Menard's family has stood by Brendan, supporting him through the case and saying he would never have intentionally killed his father. Hudson, we are working on much more for 6:30 on Vancouver Island Report.
All right, we'll watch for that then. Scott Cunningham reporting live in our Nanaimo newsroom. Scott, thanks. Well, a very grateful Van Trite family is connecting tonight with the Good Samaritan who lent a hand during the devastating fire on the farm on Wednesday night. The fire did hundreds of thousands of dollars in damage, sending giant flames and a thick column of black smoke into the sky over the Saanich Peninsula. As the fire spread, a stranger stopped at the farm and asked Ian Van Trite, who was the first on the scene, if there was anything he could do to help. There was. The man jumped in and helped to save vital, expensive farm equipment from the flames, but before he could be thanked, he disappeared. Just over an hour ago, the 2 men met again.
You are amazing, man. You know that?
My daughter's 12. She's learning. And I want her to teach, this is what we treat people like. It doesn't matter if you know them or not. You have to help.
The man's daughter was watching CTV News and the family contacted the Van Trites. CTV's Stephanie Sherlock will have the full story for you tonight at 11 on CTV News with Louise Hartland. If you felt like you needed a lift this morning, you're not the only one. A huge crane was spotted along the Victoria skyline early today as crews were working to replace the elevator at City Hall. Two big pieces of steel had to be lifted onto the roof of the historical building, then gently lowered through the ceiling and through the roof. From there, it took crews about 3 hours to get those 2-ton elevator shaft beams bolted in place.
It goes in as each side of the elevator core, and then there's additional steel members that bolt into place. So it's a bit like a mechano set that bolts together once we get it in. And then this will become the core that the elevator car rides up and down in. So all the rest of the components we'll be bringing in through the doors and assembling in the building, so nothing else comes through the roof.
Construction crews say the next step is to build a concrete wall to help secure the elevator and then to anchor the structure in case of any seismic activity. There's a major seismic retrofit going on at City Hall. The project is expected to be completed by next March. And this you could describe as a labor of love with hundreds of volunteer hours and dedication. A new world of play has risen in Ladysmith 2 years of construction later and more than $230,000 in donations. The Kinsman Adventure Playground is ready for children to come and play. The park was originally built 17 years ago but was in desperate need of an overhaul after the wood began to rot. The Kinsman Club says so far the playground's quite a hit.
On a sunny day when school's not in, it's crazy here. There's birthday parties here, there's anniversary parties. It's a lot of fun, and it's set up in such a way that mums and dads or grandparents can be here with all sorts of kids. There's a separation there with benches, and the little kids can play on one area, the big kids play on the other, and grandparents, mums and dads can sit there and watch all aspects of the park.
An official grand opening barbecue happens at the park tomorrow. You can stop by any time between 11 and 2 to take in some free hot dogs and pop and check the park out. Cowichan teachers are calling on the province to call a by-election to help replace the school board that was fired by George Abbott. The trustees on the Cowichan School Board lost their jobs on July 1st after they failed to submit a balanced budget as they must. A government-appointed administrator has been overseeing the district since then. The Cowichan teachers now want the new Education Minister, Don McCrae, to order a by-election in the next 60 days. The teachers say trustees should have a chance to be re-elected.
It's really important for people of Cowichan to be represented by their trustees who are from the community because they know the community. They're used to advocating for our children and have been doing so for decades. So it's really important for the people of Cowichan to have the representation at the school board level. These people are definitely needed from my perspective, definitely, because teachers knew their faces and could turn to them if they had troubles, and parents were certainly incredibly involved with them as well.
The trustees say the newly appointed education minister has said he is not ruling out a by-election, but he isn't going to commit to one either. Another high-profile BC Liberal will not seek re-election when the province goes to the polls next May. It's former Finance and Health Minister Colin Hanson calling it quits after 17 years in politics. The Vancouver-Quilchena MLA says he will still support Premier Christy Clark. He'll take on the role of deputy campaign chair in the next provincial election.
I think that, after 17 years, it's important that we bring in new blood, new ideas. And, I've enjoyed my role as an MLA. I've enjoyed my time in cabinet. I've enjoyed the time that I haven't been in cabinet. And I like to think that I've made a difference in British Columbia of taking British Columbia from a have-not province that it was in 2001 to one of the leading economic success stories in Canada today. I still think I have a lot to contribute in public policy in the future, but I think I can do that from outside of the legislature.
Hanson's decision was not entirely unexpected. He is the latest former cabinet minister to announce he won't run again. Among the others, Kevin Falcon, George Abbott and Blair Leckstrom. And the BC Conservative Party by-election candidate has jumped over to the Liberals. John Martin will run as a Liberal in the Chilliwack riding. That was announced today. There's a cougar alert tonight in the Parksville-Qualicum beach areas, and it appears that the big cat may be prowling around Arrington as well. Take a look at this. A large male cougar perched high in a tree, staring right into the lens of the camera. The shot was taken in Arrington this morning. The cat has been seen in the area a few times. Conservation officers remind you, if you do come across a cougar, stay calm if you encounter one, back away and call police.